Hello there, my ghouls and goblins. Around this time of the year, I am only watching horror movies. I mean, yeah, I'm doing that all year long, but now I'm doing it extra hard. But with so many of them, it's easy to forget about all the ones that slip through the cracks. So let's glow up the ones that get left behind. And hey, shout out down below in the comments what your favorite underrated horror movie is. If it's that underrated, chances are I haven't heard of it. So let's dive on in. Number 5, you're next. Hey, family dinners are always a bit awkward, aren't they? You know, trying to get the gravy passed to you, trying to avoid an argument with your uncle about your career, and trying to elude the vicious sickos that are hunting you and your family for sport. Your Next is a 2011 slasher directed by Adam Wingard, who also blessed us with Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the finest films ever made. Made on a humble $1 million budget, Your Next is a horror movie that brings it to the absolute basics. One house, one troubled family, and 3 very dangerous psychopaths. An estranged family is meeting for a reunion at their summer home in the rural Deep South, and newcomer to the family, Erin, is nervous to be introduced officially as her boyfriend's long-term partner. Now, tensions are high enough with the usual family drama before the first crossbow bolt pierces the window, as the family is being hunted by a relentless pack of bloodthirsty animal mask-wearing lunatics who seem to be doing this whole thing just for kicks. Watch the family fall apart under pressure, metaphorically and uncomfortably literally, as they're picked off one by one by their sick predators, until one of them starts to rise up unexpectedly against their tormentors. Now, if you were a fan of the Hotline Miami games, this is probably as close as you're ever going to get to a movie for that 80s splatter feel and all the animal mask wearing lunatics. Your Next feels like a movie that got time traveled from 1984 in the best way. It's a throwback to the golden age of B-horror movies, wet, gross, stupid, and in the darkest ways, really funny. This movie's almost a dysfunctional family comedy, if you can call it that. It's sinister, sick, gruesome, and hilarious, has an absolutely great sense of style, really cool soundtrack, and I guarantee you the main song from the movie is gonna get stuck in your head for weeks afterwards. Definitely check Your Next out if you're looking for some fluffy horror fun. I've got a DVD at home if you want to borrow it. Now, hey ghouls and goblins, you already know that the best place for the scary video Hey ghouls and goblins, you already know the best place for scary videos on the web is right here, but if somehow you didn't know that, always a good time to learn, so why don't you subscribe so you never miss a scare. Number 4, The Color Out of Space. When we think H.P. Lovecraft, we tend to think of giant squid monsters and incomprehensible madness. Well, this movie's got one of those in folds, and it's not the squid monster. The Color Out of Space is a 2019 horror movie directed by Richard Stanley, adapting the H.P. Lovecraft story of the exact same name, but modernizing it slightly, bringing it up to the 21st century. The story details a father moving his family to his late father's farm, escaping the bright lights and humdrum of city life, moving to his hometown of Arkham, the exceedingly cursed city from Lovecraft's writings. What should be a breath of fresh air and lovely times in the cottage turns to a nightmare when an asteroid falls to the farm, releasing with it a mysterious color that seeps into the farmland. A color out of space, if you will. It affects the minds of everyone around the farm, all the animals, and begins to seep into the water and drive everyone to incomprehensible madness. Nick Cage plays the patriarch of the Gardner family, and let me tell you, there could not possibly have been a better actor for the lead in a movie about slowly going mad. I mean, Nick Cage on his absolute best day already seems like he's about 2 screws short of absolute madness, so watching him in this is a treat. You spend the entire time wondering if the insanity is taking him over and consuming his brain, or if that's just how Nicolas Cage talks and he thinks he's doing a New England accent right now. Color Out of Space builds really slowly, leaving you on edge the entire time, and when the madness sets in, it sets in hard as you painfully watch the farmstead fall, desperate that maybe, just maybe, someone will pull through against the immeasurable horror of some entity beyond the cosmos. It captures Lovecraft's writing effortlessly and brings it to the modern age flawlessly, with all the blood and insanity you could hope for. Number 3, The Void. Our next entry on this list is The Void, a 2016 horror flick by Steven Kostanski, another Lovecraft horror movie. Your host has a little bit of a bias, and this one's Canadian made, so I have to include it based on that alone. It also totally rocks, so there is that. The Void is another flick that feels like it time traveled through the mid-80s, and maybe it's just my personal tastes, but that is very much a good thing. The Void seems like the kind of thing John Carpenter would have slapped his name on. A small-town deputy has his night wildly disturbed when he finds someone suffering from violent injuries, and after taking him to the local hospital, finds himself trapped in the hospital with his ex-wife, a nurse, who's dealing with a crisis of her own as the hospital is being overrun by an onslaught of mysterious injuries and madness. The two estranged lovers find themselves caught in a blood-soaked conflict between a sinister cult and some entity that appears able to revive the dead, albeit a bit twisted into horrifying monstrosities of flesh and bone. Now, if you're like me and you think The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made, The Void feels like it could be its unofficial sequel. It's better than the actual sequel prequel to the thing that they made. The special effects on the monsters are fantastic. If you're the kind of ghoul who loves puppets, prosthetics, and gallons worth of corn syrup blood, The Void has everything you are looking for in those three spades. And the plot is fun, and it has some good twists and turns, but let's be honest here. You're watching this one because it's got very gross monsters and really cool Lovecraft-inspired mythos of cults and a great god beyond the stars. You want my advice? Grab a friend or two, order the largest, greasiest pizza your local favorite spot has, grab a 2-liter of something carbonated, and have a great Friday night with this one. The Void to me is what a good horror movie should be. Gross, scary, a little stupid, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Hush. Okay, enough movies about incomprehensible horrors from beyond the stars. Let's reel it in a bit, and let's get back to some comprehensible horror. Home invasion. Lock those doors. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the volume up. Hush is a 2016 slasher home invasion movie coming to us from Blumhouse horror icon Mike Flanagan, director of a ton of amazing horror projects like Oculus, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of shows, and Hush is no exception to that rule. A deaf and mute horror writer, that's why I did that before, who lives alone with her cat in the woods with a few isolated neighbors around her, becomes the unwilling target in the most dangerous game when a twisted hunter decides to make her his prey. After hunting her neighbor with a crossbow, he sets his sight on her next. When he learns that his next victim is deaf and mute, it seems like he finds himself thrilled at the possibility of a challenge. Now, Hush could have very easily just been your run-of-the-mill slasher home invasion movie, but it stands a lot taller than that with some incredibly fantastic sound design. I mean, I would hope so, given the premise of the movie and the name of the movie. The movie is so tense and saves its sounds really effectively for when it knows it's going to be the scariest. Makes it a lot scarier than the usual horror movies with a bombastic booming soundtrack and tons of scare hordes. It lets you really breathe in the tension. The cat and mouse game between the protagonist Maddie and the unnamed hunter feels deeply personal, putting you smack dab in the middle of it, chewing your fingernails the entire time as you hope for the best. Please check out Hush. Now, number 1, Green Room. Coming in at our number 1 spot is one of my favorite horror thrillers of all time, Green Room. An A24 horror classic before that was even a cool thing to describe your movie as. A failing Midwestern punk band are trying to hit it big while traveling the Northwest, barely scraping by on instant ramen and van life when they agree to play a gig at a rural roadhouse. Absolutely thrilled at the prospect of getting paid for once, the band takes the gig without asking any questions, only to swiftly discover upon arriving that they are in bad company. The bar is ran and owned by a skinhead gang who don't take kindly to them whatsoever. After the bassist witnesses a crime in the eponymous Green Room, the band is trapped by the gang who refuses to let them leave. Alive. From here, the movie turns into a sort of reverse home invasion as the band tries desperately to escape the clutches of the gang by any means necessary. Green Room is tense. You are going to feel like you are trapped in there with them. If you've ever survived a local DIY show basement, then the sights of Green Room will look pretty familiar to you. Setting a high-octane horror movie in such a hostile environment that you'll recognize makes it feel all the more real. You know, I've seen countless horror movies in haunted houses, but I can't name that many in a bar basement. Green Room is horror at some of its best, taking a concept I guarantee you haven't seen before and exploring it beyond just a simple bloody slasher. Fantastic camera work, dark humor, and a gripping plot with lovable characters and truly hateable villains. We are 3 paragraphs into me talking about this, and I haven't even dropped the biggest bomb, which is that the leader of the skinhead gang is played by Sir Patrick Stewart in one of his most unhinged roles ever since maybe American Dad. I'd say he steals this thing, but honestly everybody delivers. Anton Yelchin also delivers one of the best performances of his career as the band's weary, tortured bassist. Go into Green Room expecting a super tense, shockingly gory, but amazing horror movie if you can brave it. Just make sure you get a stamp on your wrist so you can leave. That's all for this video, my little ghouls and goblins. Let me know if you watched any of these. Thanks so much and take it easy.